Can I call everybody to order? And welcome everybody to this meeting. First item is apologies for absence of apologies from Councillor David Harrison and Councillor Peter Watley. I think everybody else is here, we've been expecting. Yeah. We okay? Right. Disclosable declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other disclosable interests. Have I any? No? Right, carry on then. Confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. Anybody, any comments on those? Well done, thank you. And sorry. Yeah.
Apparently those who didn't attend the mandatory training can still remain on the committee till the end of March.
Yeah.
It's a bit unfair to tell us all we've got to get there. We put ourselves out a lot in order to achieve it on that day, and then decide we didn't afterwards. Just a comment.
Yeah, I think part of that was actually the persuasion from those of us who were concerned about it to try and ensure that those who couldn't stayed on as long as possible. Hopefully, I mean, we'll be in need of retraining with the new things coming in. We were listening to this afternoon at the JAP meeting, and maybe we can have a compulsory training in April, so that would resolve it for everybody. We maybe only a meeting missed. Okay, of course, again, if that comes in with only 11 members on the committee, then that might resolve that anyway. It's going to be interesting times for all of us, I think. So we'll see. But you know, it is what it is, unfortunately, I think. Right. Chair's announcements. I've got Simon Jones. Oh, sorry, seconder for the minutes. Right, thank you, Councillor Bruton. And though everybody happy with the minutes, apart from that, lovely, thank you. So that's unanimous. Right, Chair's announcements. On my immediate left, I've got Simon Jones, Air Development Manager. Next to him, Lee Walton, the case officer tonight. Hayley isn't here, whose case it is, so I won't announce her. On my right, I've Jenny, our legal advisor, and on my far right, Bronwyn Tompkins, our Democratic Services Officer. We haven't any of our internal consultees tonight at all, so we're then on to an update report, which I think was circulated yesterday, so everybody has had time to read it. Everybody content with that? Right, thank you. And then we're on to the first application, item 6, the application for Knighton on team for a battery scheme. Lee, would you like to lead off on this, please?
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just report that since the update sheet was circulated, an additional 3 neighbour responses have been received. 2 raise objections, 1 offers support. The concerns do not add to those considerations that have already been considered. Can I also clarify that the application that's before committee tonight was brought at the request of the ward member in response to the scale of development and the local interest that this proposal has engaged. And moving on to the overheads. If I can just run through them, what we see is the aerial image to note the location of the Waddings farmstead, which is to the south of the site, and the Grade 1 listed church, which stands to the north of the site. And also to note that the access route for the construction traffic would be taken from this point on the main road there. We've got the red outline that's been submitted. We've got the site layout showing you the Betts compound on the eastern part of the site. And then I'm going to run you through a series of plans to show you the different structures that would occupy the compound site. So here we have the substation plan within the southern part of the compound. We have the elevations which show heights of some of the structures from 6.7 meters at the highest to 6.1 and 4.8 meters in height. The project control room, 2.7 meters in height. The distribution network operators substation, which is 3.8 meters. The one of the battery units, 2.7 meters. The battery interface cabinet, 1.8. And so we go on to spare parts container, an inverter, twin skid, 2.9 meters in height. And then there are the water tanks, 2.2 meters in height. We've got the palisade fencing and gates that would enclose the compound, 2.4 meters in height, and the CCTV cameras, 3 meters high. And then I've got 4 elevations showing you from, in this case, the north elevation. And we've got the east elevation. We've got the west elevation. And finally, the south elevation. We've got the southern construction access point that would be created. And it's envisaged that the roadside hedging would be put back once the construction vehicles have ceased to use the site. We've got the northern access point, which is the gated access that's there at the moment, that would be maintained. We have the landscape plan that shows you the areas of planting. Most important here would be that area that lies between the northern boundary and the northern compound area at the top of the image that you're seeing. And so we come to a cross section that we're looking here at the Grade 1 listed church, and we're looking at the site itself. The dotted line is not helpful because it's looking over the hedge. We're actually looking through the hedge at this point and what we can see. And so we come to the photographs showing you the lane. We've got a zoomed in close-up of the Grade 1 listed church taken from outside of the northern boundary but alongside the hedge. We have a view from within the site. This is within the compound area of compound. Again, I draw your attention to the Grade 1 listed church spire that you can see there in the image. And then turning around, we're looking south, and on the far right you can see the Waddings Farmhouse non-designated listed building. Then taken from the public right-of-way by the roadside, and again a zoomed-in image showing the site. We've got the non-designated heritage asset there in view. We can also see the image there, the lie of the land, so the hedging on the eastern side of the site you can hardly see because of the lie of the land. And so we come back down, we're out front of the Grade 1 listed church. We're looking back towards the site on the horizon. This is an image taken when I visited the house alongside. So from the first floor, looking back over the site, you can see the pylon there on the right-hand side that would be connected to the BESS. And then there's this zoomed in image that shows you the northern boundary. We have a tractor on site, which would probably be 1.5 meters taller than the BESS. So one would envisage looking at that the BESS along the northern sides of the battery storage containers along the northern edge would probably not rise above the hedgerow thereabouts. So, I mean, essentially, I would draw members' attention to section 7.8 of the committee report that's entitled Climate Emergency. And of course, there's the position taken by the national policy, planning policy and guidance in seeking to move us to a low carbon economy. I think members would also be aware that it's generally accepted that there is a national interest with this particular type of application. There's an urgent need to secure renewable energy forms, with the proposed storage facility providing for future grid resilience, enabling there to be a constant supply from the stored energy. In seeking to address the current imbalances in generating the renewable energy sources, and in seeking to prevent blackouts in the future, essentially. In terms of the location, there are certainly other examples where planning appeals have been allowed, where we are talking about sites that are in very similar locations. So in a field in the middle of the countryside, removed from nearby settlements or extensive built form. The highway response, of course, has raised no objection. In terms of the landscape character, there has not been an objection, and the site is generally visually well screened, or could be made so. I think really we come back to the Grade 1 church that I've emphasised from the start, and its setting, which is of particular interest. And I think the settings of other designated and non-designated heritage assets would likewise be affected. Whilst there would be harm, that harm is not judged to outweigh the substantial weight which would need to be afforded to secure the national energy supply. And I think also it's very important that the harm would be temporary, and it would also be reversible. So accordingly, the recommendation is to approve, Chairman.
Thank you, Lee.
Okay. Yes, sorry. So we've got this last slide and the amended recommendation, and in particular, if I can draw your attention to A and B. So where we are at the moment, we realised that we should have consulted with Historic England, because we're dealing with the setting of a Grade 1 listed building. So we await their formal response at this point. So that's the proposed wording at this point for members. And we would also bring back any sort of minor amendments that may be required to the chairman on this occasion as a result of any feedback from Historic England.
Chairman, if I might add to that, we just wanted to draw members' attention to a online petition relating to this proposal, which a number of the representations made directly to the local planning authority here at the council have alluded to, but we've not had a copy of in a sort of complete form. So the petition hasn't been sent to us with the accompanying list of signatories and their names and addresses. So all we've got is a reference to a website, which I've got a print off of I can circulate, which tells me the total number of respondents and the concerns and issues which they were able to read before signing said petition. But who has signed it and where they live, I can't tell you, because that information hasn't been shared with us, nor has the contact details for the person who's organised the petition. That information is not available either, so we haven't been able to go back to them to say, can you assist us here? This is what you need to do in terms of submitting a petition. So that means that you can, I think, only give limited weight to said petition. But the issues of concern which those people have signed up to are nonetheless ones covered in the officer report. I'll circulate this just so you're aware of it. But as I say, it hasn't formally come to us as a submitted petition. But I thought rather than ignore it, you should be aware of it. So I'll circulate that. And it's just a print off of the web page. It's an external website called change.org, which provides a template for people for planning applications and other matters to organise petitions.
Just as further clarification, when we receive a petition, it normally is just taken as being one submission in effect, so it has very limited weight, a petition normally, as I understand it.
Well, we record usually the first named person on the petition, and that becomes our point of contact, and then it's incumbent upon that person to contact the other people on other signatories on the petition to let them know about arrangements, the committee meeting, etc. We don't count them as, or we don't log them all as individual representations. It's just one as a petition, but members are aware of the number of people who've signed. So
Lovely. If possible, could we move that round quite quickly, because I would want another copy. Thank you. I would not want us to be have people speaking well so that people are reading it.
I'd just add, if I may, Chairman, on what's been circulated, that the person who did set out that petition on that website did include, fortuitously, a link to the council's website and the application reference to enable people who were also responding to the petition to respond directly to the district council if they chose to. So people weren't oblivious to the information that was published on the council's website when they were seeing that information, which has obviously resulted in additional representations directly to us, which are accounted for in the report.
Thank you. Right, I think everybody's had a chance to look at that. Next would be for our parish council representative, Councillor Dwayne Hubbard, to speak. Thank you. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Councillors. Following first engagement with the community in the screen application back in July 24, the Parish Council and all councillors began an extraordinary amount of research and consultation, including with their own parishioners, to ascertain the true feeling and judgment on the proposal. By the time the actual full planning application was submitted with negligible change to the initial proposal, all councillors were knowledgeable with all the necessary information to assist making any decision in conjunction with the continued public comment during the full application process. Speaking for myself as an example, I use my workplace of a DIY homeware store in Tenbury as the main way of ascertaining local opinion. There I had no control of the neutral and random public traffic coming through. My own aim was to canvass 25% of the just over 200 parish households occupied with around 500 electorates. This I did. Many I hadn't even spoken to or met before. The result was approximately 85% of those I spoke with were supportive of the application. Over several months there were many hurdles, misinformation, interference and demand for a predetermined rhetoric of total objection, followed by smears and attempts to undermine the latter decision. But on the 23rd of January 25, parish councillors made a unanimous decision to support the application, having satisfied themselves it was necessary for the growing energy crisis. It was in the interest of the local and the greater community, knowing that a majority of the parishioners were supportive of the plan and an opportunity for the Bradleys to diversify in a difficult farming world. The decision was made with the request that the applicants appease certain recommendations, which we are glad to see they have paid attention to. At the time of the decision, there were objections from 31 residents, 26 households, commensurate to approximately 15% of the households and 6% of the electorate. Later objections did come after the publication of the Parish Council's decision as a last-minute rally to bolster opposition. These and other objections do not overly amplify the level of objection or the figures. Some objections are duplicate, others are from wider areas who should have no influence over the local decision-making. An online petition was not calculative of local opinion, as it's an unmeasurable online global poll. The whole Bradley family are actively involved with the Young Farmers Club. They are highly regarded for their part in stewarding the land. In fact, they own the private road on which the local parish church, the local parish hall and several private dwellings sit. They allow the use of this for parking and wider clear their fields for overspill parking to accommodate weddings and funerals. They ensure the land over which these venues look out onto is beautiful and worthy of its heritage. The proposal is not imposing on or ever likely to make any visual or other impact on the landscape. Many of the surrounding properties and residents, including those objecting, have all benefited from farming and its need to diversify to survive, as all of these were farms or farm buildings that have been sold and converted for normal use. Some were previously part of the applicant's farm, benefiting from the setting up of their own businesses. In the words of a very elderly, long-standing member of the community and a prominent church member, he basically said, "Batteries or blackouts, we need electricity. Why can't people come here and understand we need these things?" Thank you.
Right. Next speaker is an objector, Nicola Harris. Thank you. You'll have 3 minutes as well.
The Conservation Officer recommends refusal of the planning application because the development will harm the setting of a multitude of heritage assets, including a Grade 1 listed Norman church located just 200 metres from the development. There will also be harm to Grade 2 listed buildings, as well as harm to a non-designated heritage asset. Special regard must be given to the desirability of preserving the setting of heritage assets, and that harm must be very carefully weighed against the public benefit of the development. As to public benefit, the development does not generate renewable energy. It simply stores surplus energy generated from both renewable and non-renewable sources. The issue of renewable energy is important. However, we say this development contributes in a tiny and insignificant way to the national picture relating to renewable energy. Importantly, the development offers no tangible local public benefit. In July of last year, the Highways Authority reported that the site access, a narrow single track lane, was unsafe and unsuitable. Later in December, Highways considered the widening of the lane at multiple pinch points to make the unsafe access safer. However, the widening of the lane may not be within the applicant's control. The agreement of third-party landowners may be required. The landowners have not, as far as I understand it, been identified as part of this process. We say planning permission should not be granted unless there is a realistic prospect of obtaining agreement from the requisite third-party landowners as appropriate, together with any other relevant permissions. And the position in relation to these important issues is not clear, including the feedback from Historic England. The development will change the landscape and rural character of the area, and the Trees and Landscape Officer, as well as the Ramblers Association, the Campaign to Protect Rural England, object to this proposal. This is a heavy industrial development in a deeply rural setting. In addition, the widening of the lane will cause the loss and severe damage to a long stretch of established hedgerow. At an MHDC Planning Committee meeting in December 2025, members placed significant weight on damage to landscape and rural character, and the planning application in that case was refused. Local opinion matters, and there have been 86 objections from mainly local residents, compared to just 10 representations in support, which are not all from local people. I can. There is also a petition of 566 signatures from change.org set up by a Sam Perry. I understand that the petition is not in the format preferred by the council, but the signatures can be verified if required. The parish council, can I finish with 2 sentences more?
Go on, quickly.
The parish council have suggested that there is majority support for the development, but they haven't provided any tangible evidence of that. We say the tangible evidence demonstrates that the majority of local people are against the development.
Right. Next speaker is the applicant, Stuart Hammond,
Thank you, Chair.
or some speaking on behalf of.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, Chair and members, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Stuart Hammond of Enray Power, and I'm reading this statement on behalf of Mr. Bradley with his sons, who are the generational farmers. Mr. Bradley's looking to pass it to his sons. We've worked closely with them for over 2 years to shape this proposal. The first thing I'd say is, this should be about planning matters. The parish council, we have to be near a connection. That field provides the connection. The lady that spoke before us acknowledged the benefits and acknowledged addressing climate change. Yes, the best can be stored with any electricity, in the same way that when you flick on your kettle, that electricity will be provided by this BESS. There is a national need for that. Looking locally, it was suggested about community benefits or the highways. Firstly, members should note that the officer's recommendation is one for support, the parish council supports, and there have been no objections from statutory consultees. They are objective planning officers, and they advise the planning officer who's concluded in support. The highways are a technical and objective third party, and they've raised no objection. There is no suggestion of widening the road. It's managed through conditions. Yes, there's been further information, but that shows the effort and the transparency and the issues that we understand, and we've addressed them fully. But looking at the local, Mr. Bradley's family came to the Waddings in 1961. He's the head of the family business. It's a farm. They manage the countryside. They're custodians of the countryside. He's lived and worked there all his life, as with his sons. He is local, part of the community. He wants to pass on the farm to his 2 sons. This is a traditional family farm. It produces British beef, lamb, sold locally through auction markets, directly supporting the rural economy. The farm typically runs around 150 head of cattle, 600 sheep at lambing time, supported by grassland and some arable cropping. It relies on rural contractors to sustain that business. That's jobs in the local area. It's firmly embedded in the local area, economy and community, and this BESS will support that farm in troubling times. The land itself is manageable. Over several years, the family's worked hard to improve it. They provide, they've run several awards from livestock markets, from Hereford, Ludlow and Tenbury. The farm's topography creates small fields. It's difficult to manage. They've got several public rights of way that run over that land. They manage it at financial cost, but it benefits the community. It benefits the people who want to enjoy the countryside. That farm and that family manages at cost. They're simply trying to diversify and sustain themselves for 40 years. After 40 years, this will get returned to agricultural land. Mr. Bradley also manages the fields around the setting of the church. He maintains them. He keeps them green. Yeah, cool. I'll just flick the conclusion and just say, overall, there are no objections from statutory consultees. The officer's recommendations want to support. The parish council supports. There are no unacceptable impacts that have been identified, and the balancing by the officer is in line with the NPPF in terms of heritage. We have the benefits of tackling climate change. There's the contribution to energy security and grid resilience from a need from foreign fuel sources, and this is supporting a family farm that underpins and embedded in the rural economy. Thank you in advance for your support, and thank you to Mr. Bradley for supporting farmers in the end.
Right. Local member Douglas, you're on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. Take a deep breath. We all need electricity, and people don't realise that electricity that can't be used is returned to the ground. It's lost. A lot of the wind turbines in the sea cannot be used full pelt and full capacity because they can't move the electricity around and they can't store it. Lee commented that I asked for this to be brought before the committee because it's the first one in Worcestershire, and I thought it would be an interesting exercise and important that all councillors had a fair say and a fair understanding of what we've got to look at. I'd like to thank the councillors that came for the site visit on Monday, a rather wet, squodgy day, and I'm glad you made it, Dean. I'm glad you made it. The use of electricity is an important part of our society and infrastructure. I doubt if there's anybody in this room that doesn't use electricity. Anybody off-grid, generate their own? No. I have, in previous applications on this council and on Wyre Forest, dealt with other energy infrastructure matters. We could be dealing with wind turbines, water storage, waste disposal units. The heat from power plant at Hartlebury comes to mind. A lot of objection put into that, but it's now working successfully and at full tilt. I'd thank Lee for the very comprehensive report and detailed report, and councillors would have seen that. There are certain things that have to be managed because of the topography of the area, but we can see that biodiversity net gain and a monitoring fee and a Section 106 agreement has to be put in place. There'll be increased screening of the site, and as councillors and officers could see when we attended, and Mr. Bradley very kindly parked a tractor so that we could gauge distance and height at the time, which was very helpful. Even as we see the site now with no leaves on the trees, it could be shown that it was well screened, and with more planting and the natural cycle of our countryside, it could be or will be sufficiently hidden and screened. Concerns over the highways. Well, all country lanes are a bit narrow, but I expect Mr. Bradley's got some fairly big tractors that come up that bank fairly regularly, and feed lorries, and other equipment. And the conditions have been put in the system or in the application to be able to control that, which I think is important, bearing in mind that there will be a period of disruption with traffic attending for the construction period. The actual units are actually smaller than lorry containers. Lee, that's right, isn't it? They are smaller than the standard 42-ton container. So if anybody can imagine a lorry container, you've got to imagine something a bit smaller than that that's on site. Others have commented on loss of farming land. Well, this is pretty marginal land up there on the ridge. There has been consistent improvement since the 1800s in grassland management, but it's not something where you'll be growing peas and carrots on. And as we walked across the field, you could tell it was quite heavy soil. Yes, wet, Barbara, wet. Yes, I had my wellies.
It didn't say.
Yeah. So the loss of the farming land is to be considered, but it not such weight as to the economic survival of the business as a whole and business diversification. Part of government policy, it doesn't matter which colour government, has been asking for farmers to approach diversification projects in many areas and many different spheres. I'm going to use the word fields, but yes, so that this is literally a business diversification, improving the family security and business security and perhaps the succession of the business in time. Right, okay, I would like to reserve my position on this and ask for it to be put to general discussion, Mr. Chairman. And if you could come back to me then after general discussion, I would then like to make proposals and look for a seconder at that time. Would that be acceptable, sir?
Perfectly acceptable.
Thank you very much.
Right. Have I any other people who wish to speak on this? Tom?
I wasn't aware that we created a new policy limiting members to so many. How many minutes was that?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Is that that's what we have now? Is it?
That's within our constitution. Normally, I allow latitude, and I'd allow Douglas more if it was particularly necessary. But that's what we're aiming for. Put it that way. Oh.
Thank you for your clarity.
Barbara.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I agree with everything that Doug has said, and it was very interesting what the agent said as well, and all of the effort that our farmers do put in to our communities and keeping us fed and also helping to keep us in electricity, which we very much need. So I do agree with everything that Doug says and also what's in the report.
Thank you. Anybody else? Daniel.
Yeah, just a couple of sort of clarifications really. So access to the site, which obviously is going to be a concern. Highways have no issues on that, just to clarify that position, because obviously highways tend to have final say on these things, and if that's the case, it's very difficult for us to sort of use from that. And I guess we can't second guess what that response might be, but should we consider that that could be a pertaining factor in this as well, kind of going forward? Should we not be waiting for it, but how much weight should we be putting on that?
Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Ultimately, we're waiting on the Historic England. They have until the 4th of February. They have said that they will give me a response much sooner. I'm hoping within the next week or so. Dependent on what they say, I think the report that's been presented to you has, in one sense, covered the ifs and the buts in terms of the setting. And ultimately, I hate to say it, but it's not necessarily Historic England that would have the final say, because they feed back in. But we obviously will be very sensitive to what comes back to us, should it be going along the lines of an objection, for instance. We'd have to review that.
Daniel?
No, thank you. Thank you. It's good.
Can I just put that slide back up so members can see A and B on there, which seek to deal with that issue. B seeks to deal with the possibility that Historic England might say, well, possibly say they don't object, but they might want some minor changes, in which case officers are seeking delegation to deal with those. We don't think we need to bring it back to committee. If there was an objection from Historic England, then the intention would be that it would come back to committee, because that's the way we've worded the recommendation. So in that event, it would come back, and then we'd have to look at what the substance of that comment again, assuming members, of course, decide to recommend approval. Sorry, endorse the officer's recommendation for approval this evening.
Could I ask you put the slide on showing the picture of the view from the church up to the, because that's the setting anyway, just so people have got it anyway, so they're sure of what they're seeing. Leslie?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Godwin, for the additional information, because unfortunately I couldn't attend the site visit, so that's really useful. Just a couple of quick questions. Lee, obviously it's been raised on a few points about the fire risk. Obviously there's going to be a fire risk with any kind of energy plant, but are you happy with the distance between for the break?
As you will be aware, we dealt with the Monksfield solar farm where there were issues. I'm much more comfortable with this site because the red outline which you saw is quite extensive. So if the fire authority, and again, I've gone back to the fire authority, and condition 20 is essentially covering all the things that they wanted included to consider further. But I'm comfortable that the layout of it's okay is all I can say.
Just to add, yeah, I mean, it's so important to support our farming community. So many farms disappearing now, so if businesses can diversify, we should support them as much as we can.
Pam?
I am prepared to say this is the first time I've come across battery storage units, so I've had great interest in reading far and wide about them. And I know that, I think it was when we had the gales, that the wind turbines up in the north, their electricity was going because they hadn't got anywhere to store them, the electricity. I do appreciate that. But in the middle of non-team countryside, where I don't know where the electricity will come from, there's going to be stored in these battery units just from the grid. So it could be from a coal-fired, you know, it could be from anywhere. So it's not local, is point one. The campaign to protect rural England recognises that we need these storage units. But what their point is, the industrial equipment these processes require should be sited in industrial settings or on brownfield sites. Only in exceptional circumstances should greenfield sites be used. And if this is a test case in Worcestershire, obviously the people do not want it. And I'm quite puzzled about it. You're talking about diversification, but this is industrialisation of the countryside. Diversification is golf courses, things where the green land is still there. This to me is industrialisation of the countryside.
Thank you. Anybody else? John?
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me all right? Is it working? I think one of the we're going to see more and more of these, and one of the reasons, obviously, for putting them in the field is they are remote, and they're safer that way rather in an industrial or a town setting. And I'm my one concern, which you've already Leslie has already alluded to, regarding the separation of the units of we suggested at 6 metres, it's to 5 metres. But from what I've read about the infrastructure they put in to make sure the items are safe, satisfies me in that respect. I just think that we need these things. More and more are going to come on site, and I have a feeling that there are two benefits. A, we get the benefit of energy security, and B, it allows some farmers, etc., to diversify in difficult times. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to have my say on this thing because I did go on the site visit. Yeah, I got there finally and travelled the country and travelled the country extensively to find it. So I got a good idea of it. My first question from the report was from the concerns about traffic. But I understand that really the traffic control will basically control the peak time when people will be normally travelling for the construction period. I did see it was till 9 o'clock. I'd have thought 9:15 would have been better, allowing for school travel time normally. Lee?
Yes, there's a gift for members. If you want to go to 9:15, I wouldn't disagree. You've got to go into town in some...
The committee decides to approve. I think, like most of us, I paid quite particular attention to this application, certainly to the comments received from local residents, to the information gathered on the site visit, which was particularly important to me, and the comprehensive and balanced officer's report. Having done so, to me it seems a matter of balancing the visual harm the development would have on the heritage assets and the public good in providing facilities we will be in increasing need for in the future, where provision of electrical energy will be so vital. And I note that their contract's been signed today in the North Sea, which are going to provide 12% of the energy our houses are going to require in the future. Our own existing SWDP local plan and the MPPF require us to balance this. And the balance is clearly set out in section 0.12 of the report, particularly paragraph 7.123, sorry, 12.3 and paragraph 12.4. In these two paragraphs, and I think they're particularly important in the report, the harm is described as being at the lower end of the scale. And my personal view of that was so, that it might affect the church. Virtually any development in the countryside, I think, is harmful. But there again, we have to balance up that against the public good all the time. And looking, and I say I drove past the church in both directions twice, I think, and to me, this visually would hardly impact on the church at all. From the site looking, I had to be several times asked where the church was, and you could see the steeple from the site, just the top of the steeple. But the view from an asset is as important. But I say, to my mind, it would have relatively little impact, especially as there's going to be some increased planting along that hedge, which would break up the side of it. These sites are going to be needed, and electricity will come from everywhere through the country. And quite often it's not about storage, it's actually about balancing the energy out, because you get massive fluctuations on a very short time. So they're needed for that. As we're going to increase our electricity need by I think about 50 times or something like that. So they're definitely going to be needed. Where we put them is to some extent dependent on us. I suspect it's more, if we decide to turn this down, it would be more dependent on the inspectorate. And the way national policy is going at the moment, I think they would determine that I wonder whether they determine, if we decide to turn it down, whether we'd take the balance right of needs. Because it is a balance. All our planning decisions are a balance. We're a balance of need and the harm, and the two things you have to decide which is most important. Pam, you wanted to come back quickly?
Do you want to ask a question that I forgot to ask?
Yeah.
I was conscious of the fact you said on the site visit the field was squidgy and wet, and I had read somewhere drainage was a real issue where you put these storage units because electricity and water don't go very well together. I don't know what the drainage is like here. Did it? I might have missed it in the report.
It's engineered.
To my view, it was on the top of the bank, so it would drain relatively. It was squidgy. We weren't actually wading in the mud.
Chair, I think it's important that there are conditions, other things that often go with planning permissions. A lot of the detail we don't necessarily have up front. There is no way that the operator is going to be working with water that will make the thing go down. Certainly what the site needs is water storage, and this provides for it. And if they need more because of fire concerns from the fire service, then there's land on which to provide that. So I think I would come from the point of view that we want more water in one sense for that site.
Douglas, you wanted us to come back to you for a recommendation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just before I do, I'd like to ask Simon about English heritage and the Quangos. If they wish to attend the site, would one of our officers be with them? Would it be a formal site inspection? Would you and Lee be going? Would they actually see the site, or is it just a desktop exercise?
Well, that's really a matter for the discretion of the area officer for Historic England, whether they feel it necessary to attend. They needn't be accompanied by officers of the council. That needn't impede their arrangements if they wish to contact the landowner to enter onto the land. But it may be that they've got enough information before them in terms of the detail of the submission.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. I thank councillors for their input, and as I've said before, the reason why I brought this is because I felt that it was such an important position, an important part of the infrastructure, that it should be fully considered by the council with a detailed report supported by the evidence provided and gathered by Lee and the team. So therefore, I would ask that the council approve this application as listed, subject to the conditions which Simon originally put up on the wall there on our projection, and I would seek a seconder for it.
Would you accept my modification to
15 minutes,
9:15?
mate. Yeah,
Thank you. I know it's minor, but if it's not in there, it's not in there.
I know where the school bus runs, and I know where the roads are gritted and salted, so 15 minutes is fine. Yes.
Do I have a seconder for that? Paul?
Thank you, Chair. All of those in favour of the motion to approve in line with officer recommendations, please raise your voting cards. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for discussion and debate.
Chairman.
Those who came just this application, if you wish to leave now, we won't be offended, and I'll give you a minute to do so. Right, if I can call the meeting to order again, please. The next application is the one at Whitcott, Little Green, Broadwas. And again, Lee, if I can ask you to lead on this, he's doing so on behalf of Haley.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just quickly go through the overheads. So we've got the aerial image that shows the site, part of a roadside ribbon development within the immediate rural location. We have the red outline that's been submitted. And we have the proposed block plan that shows a subdivision of the dwelling that exists. We've got the provision showing for parking at the front of the house. And we've got the proposed sort of realignment of the roadside hedge step back. We've got the visibility details that were submitted. We've got the existing elevations showing a very simple uncluttered character. And then we've got the proposed elevations that show the raised ridge, 0.5 metre, and the introduction of dormers. We've got the rural character being shown in the photograph there within the immediate location. We've got photographs of the existing dwelling. And then we've got a photograph here showing the front garden, so the roadside hedge on the one side, the house to the other, showing relatively narrow frontage that we're dealing with. A photograph from the road, looking at the house with the hedge in location. We've got a view looking west across the frontage, and a view looking west, and then looking in the opposite direction. Yes. So, I mean, essentially, the concerns of the report would be that we're dealing with a dwelling that's quite close to the roadside. We're looking at a combination of factors which would include the raising of the roof, the introduction of dormers, and creating a more prominent building quite close to the roadside. The loss of the hedge is probably one of the fundamental issues here, which this application is pursuing, the replacement hedge, because the size of the garden really wouldn't be very effective. So we'd end up with what is effectively quite a rural character in this location, being urbanized as a result of the parking to the front and so on and so forth. I think the last photograph, the last slide that we've got here was in response. I think one of the members referred to a similar sort of dormers being introduced, etc. I think the planning officer's view was, as with other sites, that there is just that sort of marginal difference setting back, so the roadside in this location being retained. But in essence, the recommendation is to refuse, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. We've only one speaker on this, and that's the agent for the applicants, Darren Hall. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. The applicant, Mr. Chris Fennell, wishes to provide an adjacent home for his son and family in the Little Green village of Broadwas, by dividing his property into two and raising the existing roof, and support the design submitted. 1. On the principle of subdivision, NPPF paragraph 84, page 23, confirms the provision of showing the locations of 9 number local existing residential dwellings showing the use of dormer windows in the village of Little Green, a defining village characteristic. I also refer you to the neighbouring property, which you just showed a slide of, Don and A, planning reference M2501371-HP, which was granted planning approval in October of last year, setting a precedent for a similar design. 4. This design proposal respects the privacy of both adjacent neighbours and has a minimal height increase to the roof. It is considerate to the raised location of the site and being viewed at distance across the landscape. 5. On the subject of parking, there is ample existing space for 5 number car parking spaces on the site, available in 2 roadside areas. 6. For 2 number 3-bed houses created through conversion, only 2 will be required for each, bicycles being stored in existing workshop and outbuilding areas. 7. A proposed alternative scheme for improving the visual displays has been submitted, proposing to move the parking bays closer to the middle of the site frontage. 8. The applicant accepts that both affordable housing and CIL contributions will be due for payment, subject to correct policy referencing and legal paperwork being put in place. 9. On the subject of biodiversity, the proposed parking arrangement would require removal of an existing domestic hedgerow and replacement with new. The proposal is unique in that it does not require any horizontal extension of the existing property. In summary, we ask the councillors support a considerate design that allows a local young family to return to the village area, having addressed the relevant points of current planning policy.
Thank you. You get extra points for brevity.
Next.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Right. Firstly, I would like to thank my fellow members that actually came on the site visit. It rained at Nightwick, but the sun shone at Broadwas. So make a note of that, please. I've thoroughly read and understood the report and obviously also visited the site. The proposed development site is a quiet 30-mile-an-hour lane running parallel with the A44. I think you'll probably agree that I don't think any vehicles came by whatsoever whilst we were there. And we walked quite a longish way from the Gospel Hall up to the site and back again, and we still didn't meet any vehicles. Because do you think you can put the very first plan up showing the actual area with the very, very first one, that one, yeah. As you can see, Western Hill or Butts Bank, whatever you might like to call it, actually runs parallel with the A44, which is the road underneath. So obviously it's not used sort of a great deal except for access. The bungalow itself will remain the same footprint as it is now, but the roof will be increased by the height of about 0.5 metre. That's 18 inches old money for some of us oldies here. Sorry. There's been no objections whatsoever. There's been support from 2 neighbours in the parish council. The 3 main reasons in the report for refusing this application are the proposed dormer windows and the additional fenestration within the projecting gable, the removal of the hedge and additional parking, also the S106 affordable housing contribution. I will try and address all of these issues. Excuse me, I've got a frog. Firstly, the north facing dormer and gable and fenestration that seems to be an issue. So can I ask if you can put Donna Mia back up again, the planning application which has just been approved? All right, that's the one. Now, that bungalow is directly adjacent to the application itself. And this was approved just recently. So the approval of this was for similar fenestration. This application was accepted without significant objection. This application here this evening should be viewed in the same light. Now, the hedge parking and highways issues, as I'd already said, it's a very quiet lane and no vehicles at all came by us. And this road actually runs parallel with the A44, which is probably about 3/4 of a mile long. Now, sorry about this again, Lee, but can you put the very first slide up that I asked you to, please, originally, of the overhead, the
aerial view.
The aerial view, that's it. Now, if you look where the site is, just go slightly to the right and you'll see a lane coming down, which actually joins Western Hill. That lane actually comes from Broad Green. Now, when they get to the end of that lane, the vehicles are always encouraged to turn left to access the A44, even if they're going to turn right again for Broadhurst and Bromyard, for the simple reason that it's a lot safer. So technically, Butts Bank is almost just a one-way system. So it's my understanding that the applicant did, and as far as the hedge as well, that is my understanding that the applicant did not want to remove the hedge, but was of the understanding that it would satisfy the authorities. However, as there are already existing two entrances, one either side of the existing property, it could be considered that some sort of configuration could be achieved to satisfy the authorities and retain the hedge. So I don't know whether there's a plan there showing the two parking spaces, which is already there. No, that's the proposed. But anyway, it really doesn't matter. We'll go by that. Just ignore the proposal. Where the first two parking spaces are, they're already there technically. And then the other two parking spaces is just by that gazebo. And then the hedge in between could possibly be retained. Now, those parking spaces surely has got Grampian rights because they've been there for a good many years. So I believe that maybe that something could be done to actually retain the two original parking spaces without having to take the hedge away. So I think I would like to open it up now for my fellow members, but can I reserve the rights, please, to come back and to make my recommendation?
Thank you. Right, Councillor Caffey-Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the front elevation and hedge there, there doesn't seem to be any gap in that. But going by the plans that were earlier slides, it doesn't seem to be that in order to have two places to park, there would be less hedge. So is the objection that it wouldn't be the same hedge, that it would be an inferior hedge? Because Lee, you were saying that the hedge was very important in this. It looks as though the gap in the hedges wouldn't be much larger than is there already, just in different places. But would it necessitate taking out the whole of that hedge and putting in a new and an inferior one? Okay.
Lee? Yes, Chairman. The proposal is to take away that hedge, move it back, thus impacting the rural character of the lane, exposing the house more than it is at the moment. I think what Councillor Williams is getting at, you've got the existing parking at this end that you can see in the photograph, and then at the far end you can possibly see an access to parking. So we would be looking at retaining the proposal, I think, retaining the hedge so we don't touch it. All I would say, it's normal in considering planning applications that we deal with landscaping often to support new development, and on this occasion I think the officers are concerned that the landscaping that's there, that's welcomed at the moment, would be destroyed, and we'd be in a different scenario where that a more urbanised context. So the retention of the hedgerow and working with existing parking areas would certainly be more welcome.
Carry on.
You were saying that the plans as they are at the moment indicate that the hedge would be closer to the dwelling and therefore leaving a gap between that and the lane. Is there a reason for that? Because I can't see what would be done with the rest of it.
The idea is to remove the entirety of it and to
Yes, I mean, the issue here perhaps is that there are two harms. You've got the character on the one side that's important. You've also got highways and visibility requirements. On this occasion, there's the single house that would come forward. Members may take the view that one house, that future owners would be well aware of what the road conditions are, which Councillor Williams has already suggested is relatively low. I think it's one of those occasions where the planning officer has come down on the side that there's a highway issue here, but it's for members, it's in the gift of members to take a more a broader view of what the impact would actually be.
Councillor Andrew Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. It's more evident when you visit the location that there seem to me to be adequate parking spaces at both ends with the property split. From memory, there's at least on the western side 2 parking spaces, and on the eastern side I think there were more. I think splitting the property doesn't alter that. You'd probably have the same number of cars. As Barbara has said, the traffic there is very, very limited. And it seemed to me that there was really no change in the impact that this split would have on that locality. Thank you.
Yes, I was just going to add that I'm sure this can be worked around by retaining the hedge in an existing form, trimming it back a bit, obviously, and having the parking at either end. Because I think this is quite an acceptable design and development, and would create another dwelling. So I have no particular issues, and I say regarding the hedge issue, I'm sure something can be worked out to meet the officer's requirements
Councillor
to make it
Dugdale.
acceptable.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Douglas Godwin.
Thank you, Chairman. Lee, could you put up the front elevation and hedge? That one. Good, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the applicants on growing a beautiful rose arch. My wife would be very jealous. We've been trying to get one like that for a long time, so well done. A lovely rural scene, a very quiet lane, a lovely walk up there, did my blood pressure good. So I am feeling that the refusal by our officers is based on many things which really can be sorted out with some practical, sensible judgment that is not really impinging upon the environment, and the house is on the same footprint. It's just been raised a bit. That we looked up and down the road, and several of the bungalows were dormer bungalows. They already had dormer windows, and I don't think there would be any sort of harm to the environment and should be approved. And the harm is minimal. And from the point of view of which boxes we tick, I think it's a case that this can be worked around in a sensible, pragmatic way without ripping out a hedge and without having to put in new hard standing or whatever that's particularly necessary. What is there can be worked with quite adequately, and I would support the applicant and the planning as proposed. Thank you.
Councillor Falconer.
I think we'd have major problems trying to defend this as appeal, particularly in light of the recent decision in Little Whitley. It was somewhat similar situation there on building a house in open countryside. One house, and there's two on this one, but one house was considered would provide moderate advantage when it's being built, a substantial advantage when it is built. By the fact there's 500 houses in the very local area, it will not help the land supply. So on those grounds, I feel that I will support the granting of this application, because I think we'd be wasting our time at appeal.
Right. I've a question for our planners. It's been strongly suggested, and I understand the applicants, I think, mooted this when I was on the site visit, that they would rather retain the hedge and that they're only removing it because of Highways requests. If so, what would be the position with us at this meeting now on this decision and their process for doing this?
Chairman, I'm just trying to get my head around the highway response, or rather the lack of the highway response. If I'm reading this correctly, the highways have deemed, since this is just a single additional dwelling, that they are not actually going to respond. So they're not, the Highway Authority is not stating that the visibility needs to be achieved and therefore the hedge must go. So who is suggesting?
He'd have been pre-app advice that gave them that rather than... Yes.
On that point, Chairman, there are a number of scenarios now where the Highway Authority give standing advice. So they rely on standing advice. So they don't give a specific bespoke response to the proposal before them. They'll refer us to pre-written guidance, which relates to these scenarios. So it's that guidance which this is based upon, which looks at what the requirements are for creation of new accesses for new dwellings. So that's where that's come from.
Chairman, can I just come back? Thank you for that. It is what I thought. If we were minded to refuse this and to substantiate a reason for refusal based on highway visibility grounds, I think we'd be on a really sticky wicket in an appeal, because if I was the appellant, I'd be saying, well, actually, the Highway Authority hasn't said that, have they? This worries me a lot, though, in more general terms. If the Highway Authority is now in a position where, as a county council, I know this position well, it's well rehearsed at County Hall, the financial crisis, that without taking the meeting into another thing altogether, just to say that my understanding is that the Highway Authority is reviewing how it responds to planning applications, and that will be determined tomorrow, and that the County Council will no longer be using consultants as respondees, not Jacobs anymore. But also a part of that decision making may be a suggestion that local authorities, local planning authorities, may wish to invest themselves as part of a planning fee that they receive in an enhanced highway response. Because this is a very good example, Chairman, where the lack of any clarity doesn't furnish us with an opportunity to make informed decisions in the way I would like us to, in the way we used to. So I am concerned about this, and if this is going to be the case from now on, that de minimis applications of this type, just one application, one dwelling, effectively one additional dwelling, won't be something that the Highway Authority troubles itself with, is concerning me.
Thank you, Tom.
I wasn't going to add much, to be fair, but I just realised everybody else has spoken. So it's also obviously before Barbara took over this area, this used to be my patch, and I know this, and obviously Douglas before me as well. So I know this particular road well. Yeah, and over the years, all the houses on this particular road have updated, you know, and I think there are a number of ones that probably will do in the future as well. So and if we get around the thing of this hedgerow, the hedgerow remained, park at either side. You know, I'm sort of minded to say there is no issue here. Is there? It's a road that does need to continue to develop and obviously modernise itself, and this is doing no harm to it whatsoever.
Right, which comes back to my question about, because as I understand it, without the plan of with the current hedging, which hasn't been submitted because for the applicant's misinformation perhaps, or misunderstanding of the information, I don't know. But how do we go about it? Because I do believe, I think the local member will confirm this, that they wish to retain the hedge. I'll take a nod from that corner if that's so. If not, shake your head the other way. Right, yes, then.
Okay, well, I think in other circumstances where the proposal before members was where they found it wasn't acceptable, but they thought that an alternative would be acceptable, which required an amendment to the scheme, so you had something else other than what was presented. Well, that would be sort of redesigned by committee, and I wouldn't be endorsing that approach to you because that's not the scheme before you. However, in this case, I think the situation is different because what if I've understood correctly, what members are suggesting is that you simply retain the two areas of parking that already exist. One serving the original dwelling and one serving the new dwelling, and that the existing hedgerow retains. So there isn't essentially a change from the existing, which isn't the same as changing something that's built form proposed to something else which isn't before us in a tangible plan. So I think if members were minded to support, contrary to officer's recommendation, the proposal, but wanted the existing hedge and parking to be retained, what we would need to do, I would suggest, is delegate approval of the application to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure, subject to receipt of amended plans. It might just be the one plan, or maybe there may be a couple, which show the existing parking and hedging retained. That would then enable officers to reference that plan on an approval. Secondly, subject to the conditions we would have normally imposed had we recommended approval. We've got some conditions which we can just run through for information if whether we want to do that now or wait and see what the recommendation. We can just run through those briefly, can't we? We've got standard time limit, the condition relating to the approved plan numbers, water management, external materials, landscaping. The landscaping condition, I think, assumed that perhaps we might have been dealing with a new planting as opposed to retaining what's there, and a renewable energy condition. Yeah, a condition to retain the hedgerow. Yeah. Well, yeah. If that's shown on a plan, insofar as we can do that, because you can't really use a condition to require the retention of a hedgerow or tree, but with a willingness of the applicant, and that's shown on a plan, then that's the best that can be achieved. And then thirdly, I believe we'd need some form of legal agreement to secure an affordable housing contribution because there's a new dwelling being created. I think that is the extent of any legal agreement which would be required, because if we're not losing the hedgerow and we're not seeing any other built development, in terms of it's going up, in other words, there wouldn't be a biodiversity net gain consequence, which would be another element we'd perhaps otherwise have to consider. So we've got those three things, if that helps members.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Simon, because that's very, very helpful. So in that case, then, I move against officers' recommendations for this to be approved by delegation with the head of planning and infrastructure. Is that right? In consultation with myself, with regard to the retention of the hedge and what have you. I have in fact put things down that it's in accordance with NPPF paragraph 84 for subdivision of residential building. Do you need any of that or not? And it
Let's just note them, yeah.
yeah. And it also complies with SWDP 21. Obviously a precedence has been set in any case by the dwelling next door. And Broadhurst and Cosridge Neighbourhood Plan, paragraph 5.24, page 20, policy 6, part A, also supports dormers and this sort of thing. And obviously the Section 106 agreement as well. And then obviously all of the usual conditions as stated.
So everybody's clear, are they? You're happy with the proposed conditions, etc., etc. Okay. All of those in favour to approve the application contrary to officer's recommendation, please raise your voting cards. That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's time for Doug to go for his gin and tonic, so I'll call this meeting to a close.